What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Welcome back, and as always, thank you for joining me. My name is Paul Brettel. Packers sneak away, leave Chicago with the victory on Sunday, so we're here to talk about it. Got three big things, really one in each phase of the game, but first, before we dive in, as always, hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I do greatly appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. You can find all my work over at ESPNlacrosse.com. I already got multiple articles up over there on the topics we're going to be discussing today. And as always, for my Wisconsin sports fans, Packers, Brewers, Bucks, Badgers, Sports Radio Talk. Download the 105.5 ESPN Lacrosse app. You can find me on Sports Lead Monday through Friday, 3 to 6. So, like I said, I got three big takeaways from this game, one in each phase of the game. Let's start with Karl Brooks and his heroics. Though there is such a massive difference in feeling between this Packers team getting the win and being 7-3 versus losing the game and being 6-4, especially with, again, some difficult teams upcoming on the schedule. And also a loss would have put them at 0-3 in the division, but now they're 1-2. Only a game difference in those two records, but goodness, it feels like a canyon. It feels like a Grand Canyon difference between the two. But in reality, the difference between 7-3 and 6-4 was the left middle finger of Karl Brooks in blocking that field goal attempt. And as we all know, blocking field goals in the NFL, extremely rare. During the entire 2023 season, there were only 19 blocked field goal attempts the entire year. Now, doing it in a game-winning situation, obviously even more rare, although we did see it not that long ago, but the grand scheme of it all, still even more rare than what even blocking a field goal attempt normally is. And as difficult as that task is, the Packers seemingly were about as confident as you can be in that situation that, hey, we're going to go block this kick. And it all starts the week prior with the preparation. Matt LaFleur said in his postgame press conference that on Saturday night, Rich Bisaccia told the team that he will not understand if they do not block a field goal or an extra point attempt in that game. Bisaccia saw something in the film throughout the week that showed that the Bears were susceptible within their field goal protection unit in terms of their ability to letting guys through the line. And what Kenny Clark said after the game was that Bisaccia had noticed that the interior of the Chicago field goal unit specifically is where opponents have been able to generate some push, have been able to get through that part of the line. So they were talking about it throughout the week, whether it was Karl Brooks, whether it was TJ Slaton, that the Packers felt good about their chances and one of those guys being able to get some interior pressure, get their hand up, and get their hand on a field goal. And the other component of it as well is, in addition to the Bears allowing that interior pressure, Cairo Santos, the Chicago kicker, he tends to kick his field goals with a lower trajectory. And again, that's going to give you at least a better opportunity if you're on the field goal blocking unit to get your hand on it. So there are a number of factors. And again, this is just one of the truly beautiful things about football, right? Just take the outcome out of it. But just all that went into the week and identifying those weaknesses, those areas of opportunity that the Packers could take advantage of, practicing it, emphasizing it, and then in a key moment, game on the line, you come through in that pivotal, massive moment because of the work that was put in, the preparation that went into it, and all those other elements, different factors. So truly, obviously, a remarkable play, but I love the background and the what we learned afterwards about identifying it. And again, to a degree, when it comes to blocking a field goal, chance is always going to be a part of the equation, right? It's a difficult thing to do. But the Packers gave themselves the best chance possible to come through in that moment with that big game-saving play. And again, 7-3 versus 6-4, such a massive difference. So I thought that was a really cool background story to what we ended up seeing was the result in the game on Sunday. All right, next up, let's talk about the Green Bay Packers defense. There's been several games this season where the defense has picked up the offensive side of the ball or picked up the special teams unit. Well, in Sunday's game, it was the offensive turn. It was the offense's turn, the special teams' turn to reciprocate because the Packers defense certainly did not have their best performance in this game. Chicago entered the game one. We all know that they changed coordinators earlier in the week, and in part they did that because over the last 3 games, they had combined for just 27 points on offense. Bears put up almost 400 total yards against Green Bay, which is more than what they had combined in the previous 2 weeks. And a lot of that success that the Bears had against Green Bay started with the run game, specifically the quarterback designed runs with Caleb Williams. And again, we all know the Bears moved on from Shane Waldron, promoted Thomas Brown to the offensive coordinator role. And there are certainly some different elements that the Packers had to be mindful of in this game. And obviously, Williams' success in the ground was a big part of that. From the Bears' perspective, you're in the middle of the season. You only have 3 days of practice under Thomas Brown to prepare your offense for this game with Green Bay. It's not as if their playbook was going to be scrapped and an entirely new one was going to be implemented. But what we heard Jeff Hafley talk about leading up to the game last Thursday was what parts of the playbook that the Bears utilize. Maybe there were some underutilized aspects of it under Waldron that Brown wanted to emphasize. Also, from a tendency standpoint, that was the other big unknown for the Packers. Again, the Bears playbook was going to relatively stay the same, but what do they do in a second and short, a third and short, second and long, third and long? The type of plays that Brown dialed up versus Waldron could be completely different, even though it's still within the same scope of the Chicago playbook that they've implemented since training camp. So there were some added wrinkles that the Packers had to be mindful of in this game, some unknowns coming into it, because again, they didn't have the film work of what Thomas Brown called in certain situations or how he called games as a play caller with this Bears team. So there was a surprise element to it, and the Bears absolutely took advantage of that, again, with the designed runs that they drew up for Caleb Williams. Williams finished the game rushing the ball 9 times, I believe he totaled 78 yards, almost 8 yards per carry, and some of that was done with his ability to go off script, right? His ability to get out of the pocket, his ability to extend plays, but designed quarterback runs were a big part of the Chicago offense in this game. And Kenny Clark, Xavier McKinney talked about it afterwards, that that was an element, the quarterback designed runs, that the Bears hadn't put on tape much prior to this game. And so the Packers were, to a degree, caught off guard, lack of a better term, by how often that the Bears utilized those design runs. And you could tell, on those runs, the Packers, a number of those plays just did not set the edge well. The angles that they took to Caleb Williams were not the best. And again, that allows Williams to get outside. That allows running lanes to open up for him to run through. And it's not as if this Packers team has been bad against the run this season. They've been pretty solid. They entered the game allowing 4.3 yards per carry. I believe that's the 8th lowest mark in football coming into Week 11. And we've seen them go against mobile quarterbacks earlier this season. Jalen Hurts, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis with the Titans has the ability to extend plays with his legs, and they did a good job of not letting those quarterbacks take the game over on the ground. So you add all that together, the change at coordinator, obviously the success William had, just what we saw, the disjointed performance from the Packers against those runs, the success that they've had previously as a defense, and again, to what Clark said, to what Xavier McKinney said, it looked like a defense that was caught off guard to a degree by what the Bears threw at them. And the Bears' success on the ground just had a massive trickle-down effect to the rest of the game. For one, you're moving the ball on the ground like that, they're really efficient on third downs. They picked up 9 of their 16 attempts, so they're moving the ball. They're staying on the field. The Bears held the ball for almost 13 minutes longer than the Packers. The Bears offense ran 25 more plays than what the Green Bay Packers offense did. That's a massive disadvantage for Green Bay and their offense. They only had, excluding the kneel down the Packers took before halftime, they only had 6 offensive possessions in this game. Again, to come away with the win in that regard, you have to be extremely efficient with the opportunities that you have. And we'll get to that more here in a bit. So from that perspective, the success on the ground really allowed the Bears to control the game as a whole. And when you're staying ahead of the sticks, you're living in second and short, third and short situations, as you mentioned, helps you convert third down opportunities, but opens up opportunities in the passing game as well. When you're in a 2nd and 3, 2nd and 4, entire playbook's open to you. You can run the ball, you can pass the ball, you can push it downfield, you can dump it off, you can utilize play action. The defense has to be prepared and defend really everything in that situation. They have to defend the entire field. And again, that can open up opportunities in the passing game, which credit to Caleb Williams, credit to this Bears offense. They took advantage of. Matt LaFleur said afterwards that specifically in man coverage situations, Williams performed really well against this Packers pass defense. So a lot of the struggles that the Packers had in this game, again, started with not being able to stop the run, but that started with their being caught off guard by how Chicago utilized Williams in the run game, and Green Bay, who's been really, really good under Jeff Hafley at adjusting within games, adjusting from week to week. They struggled to make those adjustments, and again, had a massive trickle-down effect to how the rest of this game played out. All right, as we wrap up here, let's transition to the offensive side of the football. If you're like me as you were watching this game unfold live, I probably felt like this is a rough performance from the Green Bay Packers offense. And don't get me wrong, there are definitely certain aspects that were. But once the game was over, you rewatch it, look at the numbers, reflect on it. They moved the ball well in this game. As I mentioned, possessions were few and far between. Excluding the kneel down, Packers had only 6 offensive possessions in this game. However, they went to the red zone on 5 of those 6 trips. So they were moving the ball. As an offense, they averaged 8.5 yards per play in this game. And for some context around that figure, the league leader right now in that category is the Baltimore Ravens at 7 yards per play. So they were extremely efficient, which is what your offense has to be when you have so few opportunities to get the ball in this game, to have possessions, to try to go and score. But where things went south, where the things that left a sour taste in your mouth that made you think, wow, this really wasn't a great performance, was how the Packers performed situationally. And again, those have been issues for a large portion of the season. They were just 1 for 5 on third downs against the Bears. They were 2 for 4 in the red zone. And when it comes to red zone statistics, the success rate is determined by do you score a touchdown. Field goal counts as a miss. And so the Packers were 2 for 4 in the red zone, but to compound the mistakes that they had down there that stopped them from avoiding or making their way into the end zone, on those 2 red zone misses, quote unquote, they didn't even leave with points. They didn't leave with field goals or anything like that. Like if they get field goals on those 2 situations at least, that end of the game is a completely different dynamic than what we saw take place. And a lot of it goes back to, again, the Packers struggle in those get back on track situations. And whether it's a penalty, a run on first down that goes for no gain or 1 yard, incomplete pass, whatever it might be, Packers are struggling in those long down and distance situations. And while we have 2 paths, 2 lenses that we can look at this through. We can look at it through, all right, how do the Packers perform better in these get back on track situations? How do they perform better in a 2nd and 10, a 3rd and 8? Where I think the real issue with what they're experiencing right now and what they have to overcome is how do they get more consistent on first down? Because for most offenses out there, even the high-powered ones, if you're living in long down and distance situations often, which Packers have been this season, that's a tough way to move the ball consistently for, again, just about any offense that's out there. So ideally, and it's not totally avoidable, obviously, but you want to avoid them as often as you can. So I think when we look at, all right, how do the Packers get more consistent on third down? How do they get more consistent overall? How do they have more red zone success? What are they doing on first down? How do they become more consistent, finding ways to get positive gains in those situations so they have fewer of those get back on track situations? Because again, it's a really, really tough place to live for just about any offense. The pass rush, when you're an offense in a predictable passing situation, they can pin their ears back. They're getting off the ball. They're coming after the quarterback. The secondary, they have the coverage advantage. There's only so many routes you can run on a 2nd and 10, a 3rd and 8 situation. So you're giving the defense the advantage before the ball is even snapped. So I think that obviously I know. It's how they performed in those situations on third down, the red zone, that again left a bad taste in your mouth and going, what the heck was that from the offense? But for the most part, they did find ways to move the ball. It's just when they hit that first down roadblock, again, didn't pick up multiple yards, penalty, whatever it might have been. Again, we saw them struggle with how do they overcome that. And like I said already, Bears defense, to their credit, third downs, red zone has been one of the best defenses in football. So the Packers putting themselves in that situation was unlikely to be a recipe for success in this game, particularly given this opponent. Now, before we wrap up, if we're going to talk about the offense, we got to talk about Christian Watson, who, whenever this passing game, this offense needed a spark, he very much provided it for Green Bay. 4 receptions, 150 yards, and throughout the season up to this point, Watson's targets have been inconsistent. I mean, he entered this game 5th in targets just on this Packers team. And the big play ability that he brings is obviously what garners the attention. But as we saw in that 60-yard catch and run he had at the end of the game, Watson has the ability to impact all levels of the field as a receiver. He's not just a vertical presence. And while I do think, especially at times, there has to be a more concerted effort to get him the ball because he just brings so much dynamic playmaking to this offense, that's difficult to do as well if you're Matt LaFleur, right? Because there are so many pass catchers, playmakers on this offense, it's difficult at times to spread the ball around evenly. And ultimately, what's going to determine where the ball goes is what the game plan is. Who are we going up against? What's the best way to attack them? And then even if you have a game plan maybe centered around this play or two, that can all change very quickly with how the defense defends the play. Ultimately, Jordan Love needs to go with where the read dictates, where he's at in his progressions based on how the defense is defending the play. So as much as you want to get the ball to a specific player, it's not always easy to do. But Watson's impact also goes beyond when the ball's in his hands. Really, really solid, reliable blocker, just like the rest of these Packers pass catchers. But with his size and speed, he brings a gravity to this offense. He draws so much attention. And what that does is that can create one-on-one matchups for others. It can create better spacing underneath for others to find success in. Defenses defend this Packers offense differently when Christian Watson's on the field. So even when the ball isn't coming his way, there's a good chance he's making an impact on this offense. So those are my 3 big things from the Packers win over the Bears. Appreciate you tuning in. Hit like, hit subscribe on the video. Follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. Find all my work over at ESPNLacrosse.com.